denk dat je niet zo vreselijk veel macht hebt om dingen anders te laten gaan. Het gebeurt gewoon.
Maar ja, ik ben wel blij dat ik gewoon nog leef natuurlijk.
On voit l'être aimé, complètement distordu et il est là, il est plus là, mais en même temps il est là.
Quando hai alle spalle un dolore, una sofferenza del genere, apprezzi anche le piccole cose. Non è scontato niente, non è scontato che respiri, non è scontato che stai in piedi e cammini, puoi correre, non è scontato vedere il sole, non è scontato niente.
Bijna verdwaasd rond, in een trance rond. Maar ik moet zeggen, de zorg eromheen is wel heel erg goed. En ja, het was een heftige tijd, maar wel een mooie tijd.
Welke gevoelens ik heb ervaren. En je bent ontzettend nauw betrokken bij mijn vrouw, wat die meemaakt. En je kunt daar niks mee, maar je moet er zelf mee uit de voeten. En je hebt wel het volle vertrouwen, dat had ik wel steeds.
Io sono un medico di terapia intensiva, non un rianimatore, nel senso che lavoro con i neonati, quindi mi occupo di tutt'altra di bambini molto molto piccoli, non faccio il loro stesso lavoro, però chiaramente il rapporto con i medici è stato condizionato anche dalla mia posizione. Tra l'altro sono dei colleghi perché sono nel mio stesso, quindi da una parte ero sicuramente facilitata nel comprendere razionalmente quello che stava succedendo, cioè non avevo bisogno dei lunghissimi colloqui perché mi spiegassero per avere notizie cliniche, perché era più semplice riassumermi le cose. D'altra parte, dal punto di vista umano, dal punto di vista emotivo, questo non è servito a niente, anzi forse ha peggiorato le cose, perché sapevo cosa poteva succedere e non volevo accettarlo.
Ahora lo que me motiva es mejorar la vida de la gente. Ya no es tanto la técnica, ¿no?, como cuando eres joven, porque llega un punto que la técnica es técnica y no tiene ningún secreto, sino las pequeñas cosas que pueden hacer que marcan la diferencia. El hablar con el paciente, con la familia, el hacer una educación sanitaria que nadie ha hecho hasta ese punto y tú no lo sabías porque dabas por hecho que lo habían hecho. Esas cosas son las que te motivan, el mejorar el cuidado del paciente.
Il faut faire du cas par cas, en fait. C'est primordial. Parce que chaque histoire est différente. Et quand vous vous trouvez en tant que patient, en tant que famille de patients, dans cette situation, dans un univers où vous ne parlez pas cette langue-là, cette langue faite d'acronymes et de termes techniques que vous ne connaissez pas, quand vous vous retrouvez face au savoir et que du coup vous vous retrouvez impuissant, que vous vous retrouvez stupide, que vous vous retrouvez humilié, que vous vous retrouvez démuni, comment faire?
Jokainen lääkäri varmaan pelkää komplikaatiota tai jotakin, että mitään ei hiffaa jotain juttua, mitä olisi pitänyt hiffata, joskin siinäkin auttaa se, että harvoin tekee yksin koko päivää töitä. Nämä tuli nyt äkkiseltään mulle mieleen.
And what scares me is that making those decisions and making those wrong decisions and the realization that that decision in 3-4 weeks' time, where you end up having a patient who in effect can be crippled by life-sustaining therapy, which may not have been in their best interests or the family's best interests. And that still scares me. And I think it scares a lot of colleagues, but intensive care is much more multidisciplinary now, and I think that has helped our decision-making and has reduced that fear factor.
Honesty and humility go a long way. And most patients and relatives understand that we're also human and mistakes can happen and should be openly discussed.
Οι ασθενείς όμως έρχονται σε επαφή με εμάς, ιδιαίτερα αυτοί που βγαίνουν από το νοσοκομείο, πηγαίνουν σε κέντρα αποκατάστασης και ύστερα από πάρα πολύ καιρό έρχονται να μας συναντήσουν, γιατί ξέρουν τα πρόσωπά μας, τις φωνές μας, τον αγώνα που δίνουμε μέσα στο χώρο για να καταφέρουμε να τους σώσουμε, να επιβιώσουν και έρχονται να μας δουν, να μας γνωρίσουν από κοντά, να τους δούμε κι εμείς.
Together with my colleagues, in particular the nursing colleagues, we arranged a wedding for a patient who was at the end of his life and had decided to marry his long-term partner before he later died. And it was very moving to be part of this very special event in the intensive care unit.
It's a real privilege to be able to support a patient and their family through that what I hope is the worst thing that ever happens to them in their lives, to be able to support them through that, hopefully to recovery, or to support them through managing a dignified death.
Il faut ramener la vie. Pourquoi est-ce que tout est si blanc et voire gris? Pourquoi est-ce que ce lino couine autant sous les crocs des médecins? C'est insoutenable. Pourquoi est-ce que tout est autant aseptisé? C'est pas 3 photos qui vont empêcher les gens de travailler. Moi, je pense que c'est important de ramener de la vie à cet endroit où on se trouve à la frontière au bord d'eux, on se trouve dans une espèce de no man's land où on sait pas sur quoi ça va déboucher, quoi.
La mia opinione della terapia intensiva è fantastica perché mi hanno salvato la vita e dopo 3 anni sono qui. Anche a un altro ospedale che mi hanno dato per morto, per fortuna sono arrivato a questa terapia intensiva e mi hanno salvato veramente la vita.
Solo belle cose possono uscire dalla mia bocca, ovviamente, perché senza di loro non sarei qui, ripeto, non sarei qui oggi.
Intensive care medicine allows me to learn something new every day. So every day I meet colleagues and I hear of their new technologies, new advances, and progress in their particular specialty. But most importantly, every day is a different day with new challenges, and I enjoy the interaction with my colleagues and most importantly with patients and their relatives. So it provides a great variety, it's different every day, and it's a specialty where progress is made on a regular basis.
Grazie perché mi hanno ricordato anche come si lavora. Cioè, io faccio questo mestiere, lo faccio da tanti anni, ci sono dei momenti in cui sei stanco, in cui hai le tue cose, nel senso che hai la tua vita, hai delle preoccupazioni, però io ero serena quando andavo via, non perché sapevo che non sarebbe morto, poteva morire, poteva star male, ma era nelle mani migliori, sapevo che era nelle migliori mani e questo mi dava quel minimo di tranquillità che potevo cercare. È giusto che i bambini che mi vengono affidati e i genitori quando vanno a casa possano pensare la stessa cosa. Siamo nelle migliori mani, quindi dobbiamo sempre fare il meglio. Grazie a loro per esserlo il meglio.
I'm an anesthesiologist and I'm proud to be an intensivist. We, intensivists, are working together to fight COVID-19. Together, we are intensive care medicine.
Hi, I'm proud of being an intensivist. We are fighting COVID-19. Together, we are intensive care medicine.
I am an anaesthetist and I'm proud to be an intensivist. We are working together to fight COVID-19. Together, we are intensive care medicine.
I am an intensivist and proud of it. Intensivists with various specialty backgrounds work together as a multidisciplinary team to prevent and treat temporary risk of death due to COVID-19.
My name is Jan de Waele and I'm proud to be a surgery-trained intensivist and work in intensive care. We work together to beat COVID-19. Together, we are intensive care medicine.
Hello, and welcome to this new European Society of Intensive Care Medicine webinar. We have 1 hour in front of us of getting informed about the recent action points and important steps the Society has taken in Europe to make our specialty more visible and better known. Together with Laura GALARZA, the Deputy Chair of the next committee of the Society, and myself, Stefan, we are going to moderate this next hour. Laura is going to introduce you the speakers. She herself is consultant at the ICU at Castellon General Hospital. After the introduction of our speakers, there will be 5 to 10 minutes presentation done by our president, Jozef, followed by question and answers moderated by us. I'm looking forward to your questions and to get the speakers very interesting answers to us. Laura.
Thank you, Stefan. This afternoon, we had 3 amazing speakers, Jozef KESECIOGLU, Maurizio CECCONI, and Johannes MELLINGHOFF. Professor Jozef KESECIOGLU is full professor and head of the Intensive Care Medicine Department at the University Medical Center in Utrecht, Netherlands, and current president of the ESICM. Before becoming the elected president of the Society in 2018, he was the chair of the Division of Scientific Affairs and the Ethics sections. In Netherlands, he worked at Erasmus Medical Center and the Sophia Children's Hospital in Rotterdam as an anesthetist and pediatric intensivist, respectively, as well as the deputy director of Academical Medical Center in Amsterdam, before taking up his current position in 2002. In Utrecht, he has reorganized the 4 intensive care units and made 1 department of it before designing and moving to the new award-winning state-of-art ICU. Professor Maurizio CECCONI is full professor of anesthesia and intensive care at Humanitas Research Hospital and University in Milan, Italy, and also the president-elect of the ESICM. He is part of the COVID-19 Lombardy ICU network, an emergency task force set up by the government and local health authorities to lead the response to the outbreak. He is also author of the critical care utilization of the COVID-19 outbreak in Lombardy, Italy, early experience and forecast during an emergency response. And Johannes MELLINGHOFF is Senior Lecturer and Acute Care Pathway Leader, MSc, in Healthcare Practice and ACP at the Faculty of Health and Social Care Education, Workforce Development Stream at Kingston University and St. George University in London. Previously, Johannes worked as a senior church nurse and led the research team at St. George University Hospital Foundation Trust in London. He originally trained and worked as a nurse in Germany before moving to the UK 20 years ago. He is current chair of the ESICM Nurse and Allied Health Professional Committee and is a member of the faculty of the Hemodynamic Monitoring Masterclass. So now, I think, Jozef, it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Stefan. Dear friends, dear colleagues, first of all, we at European Society of Intensive Care Medicine would like to thank you for all the outstanding physicians, nurses, and allied health professionals working in the front line in ICUs and for everything they do when caring for lives. And I would like to say actually that we are an exceptional community. Just to begin with, actually it was 28th of February, Friday evening, when Maurizio called me and he said we have a problem. And at that moment in Lombardia area there were 3 patients severely ill from COVID-19. And I remember that a week later the number was hitting almost 2,000, and this was a huge increase in a week time. So we just actually since then we have been talking with Maurizio something like once a day, if not more, and there are very few days in between that we don't talk to each other. But the first time that we were faced with the situation in Italy and then slowly going around in Europe, we just thought, and also together with the executive committee members, a way to distribute knowledge to the front line. Because as you know, in February we knew quite little and we wanted to create something where we could share the knowledge with our colleagues. But before that, there was a letter coming actually from Professors CECCONI, Grasselli and Pesenti, urging healthcare professionals and governments around the world to get ready and how to prepare for COVID-19. We have distributed as society this letter to our 9,000 members, and it even went further than that through the social media. There were a lot of media interests and suddenly the intensive care professionals' visibility was increasing exponentially. There were a lot of interviews with TV channels, global press and online media. So this was actually the wake-up call coming from our Italian colleagues to warn us that we needed to be prepared for the coming crisis. And then we have done a couple of things. We have created a dedicated open access resource page on our website, including articles from intensive care medicine, but also from other journals, the Surviving Sepsis campaign's rapid guidelines on COVID-19. But the most important thing was that we did not open this page only to our members, but to anybody who would log in to our site in order to distribute the knowledge to a very wide amount of people. We had close cooperation in the last months with the Directeur General Santé and the European Union COVID-19 Clinicians Networks, and we have performed 2 live webinars, one being on the intensive care medicine and ethic, and the other one was for the preparation for the second possible wave. We have collaborated with national societies, and one of the most interesting one with the Chinese Society of Critical Care Medicine, with whom we organized a joint webinar on the treatment of critically ill COVID-19 patients. You will remember that we had COVID-19 marathon webinars, and we had every week a webinar since the beginning of the crisis. Sometimes, like this week, we had 2 webinars. If you look at our views, there were more than 500,000 people viewing our webinars, or at least there were 500,000 views and 1 million impressions. Our first COVID-19 marathon attracted by, it was performed on Saturday. By Monday, there were almost 140,000 people who had views. We also organized a live COVID-19, especially for low and middle income countries, and COVID-19 nursing and associated healthcare professional marathon with 3,000 views. Then the COVID-19 webinars featured presentations by international experts relating to the treatment of COVID-19 patients, and the recordings are uploaded on the our society's COVID-19 resource page. Anybody can just go in and look at it again. And here we have to take our industry. We have to thank our industry due to the support that they gave us to organize all these events. If we look at education, as you will remember, we had master classes already arranged for 2020, and this was not possible to do from obvious reasons, because people could not travel. So we have redesigned them and transformed them to an online learning experience, with still keeping maximum possible interaction and simulations with our faculty. And also we arranged that there would be free access to some of the most important subjects and modules of the academic platform in order to help those fighting with COVID-19. At this phase, also international nursing advanced competency-based training for intensive care was completed in ACTIC. As the only advanced nurses, this is the only advanced nursing competency curriculum for intensive care for the nurses to be able to use. This is something which has the potential to become an educational framework for ICU nurses across Europe. We did not stop with research during that time, but we at least we have extended the European Society of Intensive Care Medicine Research Awards deadline in order to allow researchers more time, as everybody was extremely busy in treating the patients. We have also organized, under the leadership of Professor Jan de Waele, the chair of the research committee, a one-day point prevalence observational study to discover more about the burden of the virus across the world. As of now, there are more than 400 organizations, and 60 countries have been participating, and the participation is increasing every day. Of course, we had also a lot of proposals for endorsements, study proposals for endorsement. We have also evaluated them and took decisions. We have organized surveys on PPE, personal protective equipment, and healthcare worker safety. And we also, under the leadership of Professor Eli Azulay, we have also organized an online survey to document the prevalence of mental health problems in intensivists. Both of these surveys have their results, and they are being prepared for to submit to. Some of them are submitted, and some of them will be submitted soon. Interestingly, the results of the second survey shows symptoms of severe anxiety and depression, or burnout, and overwhelming impact of the pandemic on the intensivists. Our journal, Our Pride, has a new impact factor at this moment, and we are very glad that we are keeping our high impact factor also this year, and we are going on with our successful work, and that's why I would like to thank once more to the editorial team, reviewers, and authors for their excellent work. If you look at the events, we had to cancel some of our events for obvious reasons. The Dublin Symposium on sepsis, we had to cancel. We had to cancel our joint symposium, European Society of Intensive Care Medicine, with Shanghai Intensive Care Community in July. And now the next event is EuroAsia on 12 and 13 September. We already know that this will be a hybrid event, combined physical and online virtual conference. LIFE's 2020 Congress dates were moved from early October to 5 and 9 December. We are not very much sure at this moment whether we will go on with this, but the plan B is already very much advanced under the leadership of Professor Armand Kirbis, the chair of Division of Scientific Affairs, and we will consider the health and safety of our attendees and speakers, and we will take our decision on a very responsible way during these summer months. And when we know more about it, you will know it immediately. And deadline for abstracts have been again extended to allow those working on their work during these difficult times. So, external relations. We also did not stop there with our attempts to build up relations with European institutions, member of European Parliaments, European Council and Commission, paving the way for the recognition and eventually inclusion of intensive care as a specialty in Annex 5. I would like to stop here now, and we can take some questions, I guess.
Thank you, Jozef. So we already got several questions. I will start with the first one relating to the last weeks and the pandemic. Jozef, what is necessary to be better prepared for pandemics or another wave? For example, a lot of doctors and nurses from other specialties have been redeployed. How are we going to cope if there was the second wave, bring them back? What will the role of the European Society of Intensive Care Medicine will be?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, during the first crisis, we needed to recruit a lot of physicians and nurses from other specialties, and they worked under the supervision of the intensivists and intensive care nurses. We know, most of us know these people by name, and what we had to do during the first crisis, we had to give them one day a course, and next day we had to put them by the bed. Now we should use the time that we have not to let them forget all they have learned, but we should go on with regular trainings, so that once we are faced again, hopefully not, but if we are faced again with a sort of same sort of crisis, that we can recruit the people, or at least most of them, back. Because you see all in the media a lot of comments on ventilators or equipments, but without the people you cannot work with equipment. So the people are very important. What we are doing as a society now is to have a very close contact with the European Union, and because the same question that you asked is also coming from there, and we are also telling what we knew and what we think that it should be done, not only on personnel, but also on the equipments and medicines and that sort of things.
Thank you, Jozef. So, Johannes, following that questions and also thinking about nurses and also healthcare professionals, do you think having training nurses is essential in critical care? But how do you think the ENACTIC project could help in achieving this goal?
I mean, the ENACTIC project is a great project that we supported as a society, but obviously that looks at the very advanced level nurses in critical care. So what we do need to do during the pandemic, we need to build up from the ground to have people who can help us as intensive care nurses in practice. And we've been doing that very successfully across Europe, but across the world in many countries. As such, ENACTEC is a competency level training that is kind of based on the COBITRICE methodology that has been used before, but it looks at the advanced practitioner in intensive care. Those people exist in some countries, but definitely this is an area of improvement across Europe. And as Jozef has commented earlier, it definitely is something that we can use to develop critical care nursing as a specialty across Europe, because we know not in every single country it is a specialty at this point.
Thank you. So I think I would like to go on, since we were already in education. Maurizio, on what level did the society now work together with other partners to make sure that education on a European level will go forward and that we will be better prepared?
So, you know, this is a little bit what I think Jozef was already referring to. And especially this pandemic, I think, has put a lot of, interest on intensive care. But I have the feeling that too often we talked about ventilators and beds. And actually the most important resource, I think, is actually people. So not only our members, but really people working at the bedside, doctors, nurses, people from other specialties that came to help. To me, really, as I often, is the fact that we're surprised twice. This pandemic has shown us that the need for intensive care can go up very fast. We need to find ways really to have competencies and people able to search if needed, you know, in case of a second wave. And probably we need to think a bit more long term on to increase the number of people that can be competent to manage an intensive care bed. And it's about, you know, the multidisciplinary team and how these people can work together. So I think we have a short-term strategy and a long-term strategy. The short-term strategy is something that we have to do now. We have to try to retain the skills of everyone that worked in intensive care, or was ready to work in intensive care during the initial surge, in case there is a second wave. I hope there is no second wave, but we can just hope. We need to be prepared. And then we really need to work, and we are doing that. We were doing that even before this crisis. We need to work in a way that we find a way to harmonize competencies to define who is an intensivist, in terms of a doctor, in terms of a nurse, in terms of the allied healthcare professionals that work in intensive care. So I remember even before COVID-19, we were already working with different specialties that bring a base specialty to intensive care, and we already had contacts with the European Union, because there is one key issue here. We need to find ways to have a free movement of intensivists across Europe. And probably I would actually push it a bit further, not just Europe, but everyone that works in what we consider Europe, even geographically. The fact that the UK is going out with Brexit now should not stop us to protect those members and to find ways for doctors that are intensivists from the UK, non-UK, in the EU to be able to move. This is not happening at the moment. I think we need to find a long-term solution for that.
So, thank you. So, your statement, if we think about competencies, maybe COBITRICE is the way to go. But Jozef, do you think COBITRICE could be only used at a national level, or we could extend it through Europe, or even not worldwide, but maybe?
There are some European countries already using COBITRICE, even though some of the countries translate it to their own language or give another name, but it is used, but it is not used widely. And the problem here is COBITRICE is also an instrument, a very important instrument. But the point here is the inequality in training to become intensivist in Europe. There are some countries that you can become an intensivist when your basic specialism is finished. There are some countries you have to go up to 5 years of training. There are also a lot of modalities in between, which makes the intensivist not a homogeneous speciality around Europe, and that prevents the free movement of the intensivists. You cannot go and work from one country where you are trained to another always. I mean, there are some exceptions. So competencies is the instrument here, which can also help for the standardization of the training of the intensivist. And also, we need also to harmonize so that the patient also are taken care in a more uniform way. And there, competencies has a very important role. And yes, it could be a very good solution if we work on implementing competencies as a tool. And we are in very much contact in order to harmonize these trainings of intensivists. We are in contact in European Union level.
Thank you, Jozef. Johannes, we got a short question for you, and then a second one I also would like to ask you. So the first one is the ICU nursing ratio varies across Europe and indeed the world. What do you think, in your personal view, is the optimal ratio? And perhaps a more longer question then, if we are going to keep training members of the ICU, non-ICU members to work in the ICU, what about their normal role and clinical workloads? Do you think this might be a problem?
With regards to your first question, I think one needs to take a country-specific approach here. If I take my local area of work as an example, the UK, we always had problems in the UK in getting enough medical staff to look after all our patients. Therefore, nurses have expanded their roles here quite significantly. In Germany, that may be very different, as well as in other countries. However, I think nurses are a very scarce resource. As we know, we've got a huge shortfall of nurses across all European countries. So training of these individuals and having a very, very positive, good working environment is pivotal if we want to engage young people to move into our profession. So as such, I do think a nurse ratio is country-specific, first of all, because it will not only depend on how many nurses to patient ratio there is, but also how many medical doctors and other systems I have in place to look after patients. I think in terms of what kind of care we want to provide, in terms of the holistic approach to care, we may see that a lower ratio is the more preferred one. And that also coincides with job satisfaction, as we well know, because in many countries we have a problem with nurses leaving the profession. We know we are working together at the moment with our French partners, for example, who've just created the French Federation of Critical Care Nurses, who are trying to really implement nursing as a specialty within their country, because it doesn't exist as such now. And that is a struggle for them, but we as a society, and us particularly on the committee, with having several French members in our committee, we are trying to work with them to improve the education that they would require in such an instance, and Europe-wide there are many different models that one can use in order to do this. So we are very supportive of it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Johannes. So, Maurizio, as the president-elect, how do you see the future of the society, and what could be the main goals of your presidency? And if you don't mind me asking that, do you think ESICM and ESICM and ESA are going to merge?
Well, I'll start straight with the last part of the question. So that's a big no. So thank you for asking, so we can clarify in case there was any doubts about that. And going back to the first part of your question, well, first of all, I see a bright future for the society, because the society is made of members. And I have to say, if there is one thing that I'm very proud of, what we all did in the last 4 or 5 months, is the response that we're given to the fight against COVID for our patients, for their families. What probably has been the biggest challenge for intensive care, I would say, that we would have ever thought of facing. You know, a lot of previous presidents, and even Jozef, they often tell you what you want to do during your presidency is actually something that you start during your 2 years of being a president-elect. You start to put the foundations and you start to do the project that you want to do. I have to say, not just because Jozef is here, but he's being a great president and friend for me, because we talked a lot and we talked even more during this crisis. And a lot of the ideas that I had, I was discussing with him, and we were always bringing forward something so that it was not something that would last only for the years of his presidency or for the years that would last of my presidency. We were thinking about setting up the basis or where we want to go. I remember, you know, 2 years ago, the vision that I had when I candidated myself as the president was that I wanted ESICM to be a worldwide scientific societies that foster clinical excellent research and education and gives equal opportunities to everyone based on merit. I think we made quite a lot of road in these 2 years, and it's been a continuum of work done relentlessly for the last 10 years. I hope we are in the right direction. You know, for me, the values that are leading the way now are kind of, you know, excellence, innovation, diversity. Is really, this is where we have to focus our effort. I would say we've done quite a bit. I may have a question for you guys, actually, because next you really have the future and the present, but the future of our societies. Maybe we should ask you if we are on the right track and if we've done well. One thing that I would say probably, I am proud of what we did, and we definitely want to carry on doing more, is focusing more on research. Data science is something that we developed quite a bit in the last few years. We had ideas of at some point experimenting live conferences, so conferences that would have not been face-to-face. I would say COVID-19 is kind of being a trigger to test this, and I would say we've learned a lot. And I suspect conferences will never be the same anymore for quite a few years. I really look forward to meeting people face-to-face, but we've learned that with technology, social distancing, it's physical distancing, but it does not have to be distancing. We've never reached so many people and brought together so many people as now, so we have to carry on doing that. Probably I would say where I would like to focus a little bit, we've not been able to do that as much. I'm sure you've seen the same thing in your hospitals. For me, the biggest challenge of this pandemic has been the fact that we couldn't have families at the bedside as much as we normally do, as we wanted. Probably we need to involve them a little bit more, asking them a little bit more how they would like intensive care to be in the future and what we can do with them. So bringing them into vision for our society. So, you know, this is a little bit in a nutshell. I could speak for a bit longer, but maybe you can ask more.
Thank you, Maurizio. Jozef, I have a more difficult question for you, because we had several questions now about the disagreement between the European Society of Intensive Care Medicine and the European Society of Anesthesiologists. Can you elaborate from your point of view? What do you think, what message do you want to give our members, which also include anesthesiologists working in the intensive care unit?
Well, first of all, I'm an anesthesiologist. Maurizio is an anesthesiologist. Massimo was an anesthesiologist, and we were one row of presidents coming after each other. And we are also from our heart anesthesiologists and intensive care physicians. Especially we are in intensive care the last years, at least I am. And we have also, as members in our society, 70% anesthesiologists. So, I mean, we have no problem with anesthesiologists. They are our core of our whole profession. We have a different idea. We are multidisciplinary. We don't think that one specialism should be the owner of the intensive care, but we have also cardiologists, we have also the pneumologists, we have neurologists, we have internal medicine specialists, and I can go on like that. I don't want to leave anybody out. We are very much on the competencies. It doesn't matter where what your background is. You should have the competencies in order to get the title to become intensivists. You cannot have the title because the title will not bring you the competencies, as we have said it more and more. The competencies give you the title. So that is actually the main theme of our society, and the leadership also, and I am sure also members and officers share the same idea. But the core of the whole business is that intensive care, in our opinion, should be staying also multidisciplinary. And that's why European Society of Intensive Care Medicine is a fantastic society, having all the elements in it, and also actually really working on the competencies so that people have the title after they get the competencies. That's the pure, I don't know whether you want to go more deep in it, but that's the whole idea about it. And we are not very much happy if suddenly one specialism declares that he is the owner of the intensive care medicine.
Thank you, Jozef.
Thank you, Joseph. I think you explained it really, really well. So now I'm going back to Johannes, and we have seen through this pandemic that not just nurses and doctors work at the ICU, but also some other healthcare professionals that are really needed. So what do you think that we can do as a society to involve them?
I think we are on a very, very good way in doing that already. We kind of need to strengthen our efforts in doing it a little bit more. But I've been a member of or an active member in the committee for the last 5 years. And what I've seen is a lot of collaboration between different professionals. So our physiotherapists, we did have a dietitian, we have pharmacists who come to join us at the Congress. And we've also seen that actually, particularly when you look at the Congress program, that we have got a lot of interactive sessions with different professionals in it, particularly with, the next group as being the youngsters growing up. We quite often feel like being the youngsters growing up, even though we get a little bit older and get gray hair. But essentially, I think we're on a very, very good way. There are challenges because I'm very aware that we as NHPs, we are a small group within the society, and we want to strengthen that and get more members. And we do know from serving our members when they come to Congress that many more nursing and allied healthcare professionals do participate in the Congress, but they are not members. So we made a couple of changes over recent years. One, for example, is that we reduced the membership fees for nurses and allied healthcare professionals. So it is actually worth joining because you get the full resources that the organization is providing, including the academy program and so on, which is very helpful. We have got representation across the different master classes and different groups within the society. So I think we're on a very, very good way forward to work together with others. But obviously, we want to strengthen ourselves and hopefully grow our membership as nurses and allied healthcare professionals.
Thanks, Johannes. Maurizio, I would like to shift gears a little bit. Perhaps you could explain to us what research supported the society since the start of the pandemic. What has changed because of the pandemic?
The pandemic is not a crisis, I would say, just for clinical reasons, but it has been a little bit a crisis also in terms of research. I think everyone, working with COVID-19 patients is kind of being surprised by the speed and violence of this pandemic. And I've never seen, to be fair, in my career, so many drugs being tested and tried on patients, but probably not always in the best way. So I would say that at the beginning, we may have lost a little bit the robustness of doing research properly. And this is not just in Europe, I think this is everywhere. And there was a rush of kind of finding a magic bullet and finding the magic treatment for this. We've learned that magic bullets do not exist. And we probably learned that if we want to care for patients during a pandemic, the best thing to do is probably two things. One, do well what you know it has been working from the past in terms of supportive therapies. We have a lot of research from the past that has informed us on how to ventilate patients, on how to support patients, and how to monitor patients. If we have to try new treatments, the fact that the pandemic should not be an excuse not to do research. In a way, it should be actually a trigger to do better research. Now, we had some possible ways to prepare to do research during a pandemic, but I'm afraid we were probably lagging a little bit behind in many countries and in many places on how to set up platform to do randomized trials in this period. You know, good research starts always with two things: good observations, and then good ways of trying and to see whether your observation and you can prove if there is causality between what you do and what's happening. Now, with ESIC, what we've done, we have trying to promote good research and also trying to be always to be a little bit bringing some common sense, I would say, in the webinars and digesting a bit the information that was coming and kind of reassuring our members that when we do know something, maybe it's also a good thing to say we do not know, and just to do the simple things well and to make sure that we do not harm our patient by testing drugs that have not had any proof yet. What we've done some very fast, some surveys that were informing us, for instance, about personal protective equipment so that we could have a better idea on how to protect our healthcare workers. We now have an ongoing study, which is probably one of the largest point prevalence studies on COVID-19. Yade Vale, among many others, and yourself, Stefan, as well, you know what I'm referring to, the Unite COVID study hopefully will inform us a lot about what happened during the first wave of COVID-19 in Europe. But I would say we've learned also that Europe and many countries were not ready to do research properly, to do trials properly during a pandemic. The speed at which sometimes we have to get approval, in which we have to get the same centers in many countries to be ready to start at the same time, is not good enough. And indeed, we've made some pledge to the European authorities to think about this as well. So to think about a structure for research in emergency settings, research in intensive care, you know, to be better prepared, maybe for a second wave, but certainly in case of another pandemic if it's going to happen. I would just like to mention we had some platforms to do research like this. RIMA which is run in Europe by Lenny Derde, that works with Jozef, is a good platform probably to be prepared to do trials even during a pandemic. I would say we need to take this crisis, see what we've done well and what we've not done so well, and try to sit before a second wave, or definitely trying to set up a European infrastructure for emergency, for intensive care and trials.
Thank you. Very
Thank you, Maurizio. Thank you. So, Jozef, do you think not just research, but other projects for the society have been neglected due to the pandemic? For instance, diversity or education, such as
I heard diversity, but I didn't hear afterwards.
Did you think that topics were neglected due to the pandemic? For example, diversity or educational topics?
Okay, I think the only thing that I miss very much that we neglected is personal contact, except seeing each other from the screen. Of course, there are some priorities, but if we give example, for example, from the diversity, I know that, again, with the coming Congress, it will be even better. We are working for a lot of improvements for the gender equality. The speakers of our congresses are climbing now above more than 30-35% with female speakers. I mean, even if you look at our honorary members this year and the society medal there, I mean, just saying that, by the way, don't you ever misunderstand me that we are giving certain things deliberately just because the person is female. They have the value. We are just searching them actively and finding them. So that part is not stopped, but maybe other parts of diversity are moving a little bit slower than they should be moving. Educational part, was it the educational part, the second part that you were asking, whether it's going slow? I don't think so, because it is changing. It is changing its format. All these webinars that we have provided, we had never so much reach to our colleagues and the physicians in the past. But the standardized ways that we were used to act all these years, they are getting slower because we are not mobile from one place to another. But I don't think, from my point of view, that we have left a lot of things behind. But we actually, from my point of view at least, we have found new things to add to the old existing things. And I gave the example during my presentation, the webinars, but also the master classes. The format is just changed.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want any other issues, which I missed it, but just say it.
No, thank you, Jozef. Maurizio, I think another important point to perhaps tell our members, because I know as an officer what the society or you, together with Jozef, have done in the last months on a European level to advance intensive care medicine, but perhaps it's not so known to all of our members. Can you elaborate a little bit more what you have done in this period and how much more connections you have established?
So I would start by saying one thing, is that we worked a lot in the last few months because there has been a lot of attention to intensive care, and so other people, other regulatory bodies and other structures in Europe have been reaching out for us. But actually, even before COVID-19, it was one of the main goals of all the leadership of the society in the last years to work on a principle, and that was also for one of my goals for my practice, but was also one of the goals of Jozef. And this is not something you can achieve just in a few months. It is, again, the free movement of people with competencies. You may have heard during this pandemic, I use the phrase sometimes that is being used also by other medias about, having a healthcare army. It's not that I want to have an army, but I want to think about the concept of a pool of people that is competent to do intensive care. This is done locally, but we should have the same competencies when we talk about intensive care also in other countries. You may know, with the being chair of the next, that sometimes moving from one intensive care to another intensive care for you guys, for you trainees, is not so easy, because even if you do the same job and you do the same training in intensive care, the fact that you start from different base specialties makes it very complicated. Now, we thought this is not something good. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for our patients, because I think a free movement of professionals can also enrich what we are learning from each other. And also, it's very peculiar for medicine. Many other professions, engineering or, other professions that are into economics, and so they can work country on country without so many problems. The European Union is also very keen, is being also very keen on listening to us And when we talked about the fact that the free movement of intensivists is not really so easily done in Europe, I've been asking us, what we can do for it. So I think we've been working a lot with DG Santé, for instance, on the preparation for the next wave, in case there will be a second wave of COVID-19. We were working with other parts of the European Commission and the Parliament, so we are trying to give advice, but we're trying to listen also advice from the people that have been tackling the problem of movement of professionals across Europe, maybe in fields different from medicine. And I have to say that we spent quite a lot of time in the last few months because the information that we've been able to give in terms of what's really happening at the bedside is probably being something that is not so easy to get from other sources. So I'm to say that even some of the surveys that we sent to our members, all the responses that we got back have been very useful to help on the preparation for the European Union and so on. And therefore, we're working on two levels, preparing for the next wave now and working a long term to find a way to have the recognition of these competencies in intensive care so that people could move freely between country and country.
Thanks.
Thank you, Maurizio. I think it's really good for us as next members. We really want to go abroad and exchange with our members. So another question for Johannes, and it's a double question. So a lot of countries have a shortage of nurses. What do you think is necessary to motivate people to start a career as a nurse, or mostly as intensive care nurse? And on the other one is, if we are talking about diversity, shouldn't we have more nurses or health allied professionals involved in the journal, in the society journal?
So that's a very, very good question. So the first one is, how can we motivate people? I think the pandemic has shown us that we are actually at a very good start at the moment. By having shown all the work that we've been doing as allied healthcare professionals and nurses and doctors and people clapping us, we could see, I saw Paul de Raef tweeting recently from the index that nurses are one of the most trusted professions at the moment. So we have seen that there is an increase of interest in our profession and people coming in, whether they're coming from other countries to work within Europe or also within our training. So my own university, we are very surprised about the amount of interest that we have for the intake of our nursing course starting in September this year. So we have loads of applicants, and I think this is partially due to us having raised our profile during this pandemic and a lot of people wanting to come and join us. In addition, whenever there is a kind of a socioeconomic crisis, people like to perhaps reconsider what jobs they are having. And we've seen a lot of people who used to be nurses and who left the profession to come back. So for myself, I was contacted by many of my previous colleagues over the last few months who had left the profession or were working in other specialties now, who wanted to come back and help us in intensive care. So that is really great kind of side of what we need to do to increase people coming back into the profession and then starting to work in intensive care. Now, with regards to how we can make our specialty more interesting, I think we're on a good way. So if we think about all those people who normally work in the hospital who during the pandemic have come and work in intensive care, they may have never worked there before, but we've found that a lot of them now are very interested in coming and working that specialty. And, obviously we need to be very careful in making sure that other areas where nurses and allied healthcare professionals work don't lose too much expertise. But I think this has really been able to show us that we can recruit from within our own pool of professionals. Now, the second question was about what we can do to get ourselves represented more, so within the journal. I think we are on a good way there. What we've tried to do within society over recent years, particularly at the Congress, we tried to get people who've published new material to come and present this at the Congress. And some of those individuals now are coming through in the committee, and they are coming through the different sections by taking part in master classes. Yes, it is still a bit of a challenge with regards to our journal to get our voice heard, but we found that actually we have published, and nurses and allied healthcare professionals have published in intensive care medicine over recent years. So, and I hope that we can kind of improve on that in the coming years to come.
Thank you, Johannes. Jozef, one self-reflecting question at the end. What was your greatest achievement and your biggest mistake so far in your presidency?
You should have told me this question before so that I could think a little bit. Well, I think I would not start with what I think I have done best and what I think we have made a mistake, because there are many people in the executive committee, and we do things, in my opinion, mostly together. Sometimes we have to be very quickly acting. So I think we can talk about the successes of the executive committee, and what we, I think, were doing very successfully was especially the first year, having the diversity movement to flourish. That was one of the things that we have done. The second thing was the Alive Foundation. They were just founded right before I started by Massimo, but we have brought it to a next phase during my presidency. And unfortunately, it had to be stopped abruptly because of COVID-19 during the second year. But there are certain things which are achieved, and it should be actually taken from that point and developed further. I think we have been building up a lot of relations with our sister societies. I think that's was something not started by myself, but we went on doing things in that aspect quite well. And I think our biggest success as executive committee, but I must also thank especially Maurizio for his brilliant ideas, was how we picked up this COVID crisis to profile intensive care as a profession, and to use the momentum in order to keep the popularity and reaching to the European Union states and to the European Union, and to become a partner to be able to talk with them. What I could do better, Maurizio, say a few things what I could do better in the past. I think we have, without getting into the details, we have sometimes trusted too much to our sister organizations and tried to work with them in harmony. But as one of the questions also asked me, we did not have a success there. But the alternative was also unthinkable, not to collaborate with other people. The only thing was that this was perhaps, in this case, not a good choice when we see afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we are almost finished here. So maybe you want to add something else, Johannes? Anything you want the audience to know about the nursing and healthcare professionals? Something for the future?
Yes, so obviously I'd just like to promote our own learning. So we just had a very successful COVID marathon last week, and we will start with our blended learning program again, which we postponed due to the COVID crisis a little bit earlier in the year at the end of August, and people can just visit the website and sign up. We're always very happy to be multi-professional. Actually, we can see that many doctors have also signed up for our webinars in the past, so we're very happy to have you all.
Thank you, Johannes.
Thank you, Johannes.
Maurizio?
If I can say, I have one comment, and then maybe I have a question for you guys. I'm about to start my presidency. Is also I would like to thank Jozef for his leadership in the last 2 years, especially in the last year, because it is true that I had some ideas and I was proposing to him, but he had the courage really of doing some very fast actions, I would say. And I mean, we shouldn't just be praising each other, but I would like to say, going back to those weeks, to those days in February, there was a lot of misinformation around, and people didn't know if this COVID was a flu or a bit more than a flu. And a lot of people were downplaying. And I remember myself of not being ready for this crisis. And when I told Jozef, you know, maybe it's just one extra case outside of China, what we are seeing here in Milan, but we cannot take the risk that our colleagues, our members and our colleagues around the world are not ready for this. And I think being fasting, sending those messages out is something that I think was very important. So I would like to thank you, Jozef, you know, partly for this, because I think it really helped a lot. I don't want to say anything else because you guys have been asking questions, but because I'm about to start my presidency, I have a question for you guys. Are we on the right track? What would you like to see as next in the society in the next years?
Asking questions is easier.
I will answer that question, and then Jozef, you can finish with a final statement, I would say. Well, first, let me start that I also would like to hope that much more people will, or ICUs will sign up for the Unite COVID study, which Maurizio already mentioned. I think for the next generation, you mentioned very important things. It's the free mobility within Europe. I think that's a very important point, and there are still a lot of obstacles. I think also for young researchers, it's very important that we have research support and networking support. So for example, I think the possibility which we have with our fellowship program is a fantastic opportunity. You go to another country, you get to know other people, and you get to know another healthcare system in the intensive care unit and how it works. You can see differences, you can get inspired. For example, I was at Jozef's ICU and I really got inspired in how they managed to build their ICU. And he told us how they did it, that they made the decisions and it didn't cost more. I think that was a very inspiring thing to see, actually. One last point, I think for the networking opportunity, I believe I'm very used now to this technology, to have the talk with you over the internet. But for the networking opportunity, I fear that the virtual Congress is not as good as a real Congress. So this will be a challenge, and I hope that we, when COVID is over, will have better opportunities to see and meet people in real life again. I think that's the three main points from my point of view. Laura, do you want to add anything?
I think you covered mostly everything. I think maybe we should also increase the visibility of younger researchers also in the society.
I cannot agree more. Yeah. And so, finally, at the end, Jozef, you have your final word and your final statement.
Well, I think my final words would be my first words as well. Just not only to our members, but every single healthcare professionals working in ICUs, even if they were not originally from ICU, physicians, nurses, allied health professionals. I would like to thank them for their extraordinary and exceptional energy and care that they have been giving. And I would like to stop my talk with saying again, we are an exceptional community.
Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank
we
you.
are intensive.
Right.
Bye.